Hi, I'm Ashley Swartz, CEO of Furious Minds. This is my weekly segment for BEET. No surprise, I'm going to talk about the Comcast acquisition of Time Warner and sort of, what that means that they put in the bid. Looks like there's a good chance they're going to win. Comcast is citing operational efficiencies of about $1.5 billion. They also are talking the fact that there's an incredible advertising opportunity there because of the fact they don't have as much duplication, specifically within large DMAs like New York, LA, et cetera, that for advertisers is going to be a great benefit. But the reality is that as we see consolidation in cable, we're moving back almost to this like Ma Bell construct. It's an oligopolistic market already. And I'm not sure that the FCC and the SEC are cavalier enough to stop this further consolidation. And I do think that in the long run, it's going to have a negative impact for consumers. And let's just assume that the audiences are going to suffer. But the question is for us right now is what is the impact for broadcasters and for advertising in particular? I have this theory that television is in the midst of an industrial revolution, right? And it's sort of its own kind. There's a gentleman named Robert Gordon that wrote a really interesting paper in August of 2012, and he has sort of a set of theories around why he believes we are on the cusp of a double recessionary period. He categorizes three industrial revolutions, the most recent of which, number three, sort of started in 1960 with computerization, and then further through the beginning of the century, 2000 with the internet and what that impacts. Many believe that this last industrial revolution has resulted in us sort of having, with the fact that we are a developed nation with increasing levels of broadband access, it's resulted in sort of this information economy of where we are as a point in time today. An industrial revolution is sort of generically defined as moving from, hand-tooled individual production to mass production or factory-produced things, right? And I sort of analogize this to the elimination of a truck roll or the last mile in cable, that construct, right? So now all of a sudden you can go out and buy a set-top box, not unlike the one that Intel Media was building and they sold to Verizon at retail, and you can take it home and plug it into the internet and have linear television. That changes the paradigm of the construct when you sort of eliminate the distribution and that control mechanism of what we call the last mile. In 1999, there was Kurzweil wrote a book called The Age of Spiritual Machines, right, where he proposed the law of accelerating returns. And it was according to which the rate of change in a wide variety of evolutionary systems, most importantly now we're talking about is technology and the internet, right, tends to increase exponentially. So he gave further focus to this issue in a 2001 essay entitled The Law of Accelerating Returns, where he cited Moravec around the fact that Moore's law should apply to and describe exponential growth beyond that of processing power of chips. It should look at throughput and bandwidth, actual content consumption. We're seeing the voracious appetite in video doubling sort of year over year, right? And that lends itself to this sort of fact that as the internet is growing and is becoming, incomprehensibly big and is going to have an incredible impact in every aspect of human existence, is it really free and open? I think that's a really important question because this has an incredible impact on television broadcasters. We've been operating under the assumption that because they make the lion's share of their revenue and they get paid carriage fees, that the internet and streaming technology is a threat to them, right? But it's also opportunistic that now they can go direct to audiences, i.e. the NBC authenticated Olympics brand, which granted was authenticated, but they can start to have a more direct relationship with audience, and that empowers them, right? But the reality is that if we look at sort of the construct and the situation, I think that Charter said that it was looking to buy TWC because they wanted to increase their broadband household footprint. Comcast talks about other things. The reality is that with the lack of net neutrality, which is the most important part of this conversation that we're getting to, is if we don't have net neutrality, and you can actually charge premiums for access to the on-ramp, you're not actually charging for the pipes, or throttling, right? It's the on-ramp to sort of your broadband services. If you can charge a premium, that's an incredible lever when we go back to carriage renegotiations every year, right? So let's take, for example, the CBS blackout at Time Warner. If Time Warner had the leverage that there was no possible way because they could price gouge for CBS to start to go direct to their audiences and potentially disrupt the industry by unbundling, that would have changed the conversation and negotiations radically, right? Now let's extend this construct of net neutrality to players like Google, right? We're not just streaming services or sites like let's take 10.com or the Khan Academy, right? We have a situation where folks are paying premium for services. Fundamentally, those that may potentially have the greatest benefit to consumers or audiences or the public good will result in being penalized because they don't have the cash to be able to pay the premiums because they may or may not have a true capitalist model. The issue is that laziness begets laziness. Operators paid big, and I recognize that, and laid incredibly cost-intense infrastructure So their continual network upgrades are super expensive. You know, the FCC regulation in cable has really provided protection incentives for cable that are not unlike those in pharma. The problem is that we're at a point where the increasing incentives for innovation and investment are hitting that point of sort of the curves are intersect and diminishing return for consumers, right? So the reality is that we're well beyond that stage for paid television, is that it's more ROI and an investment to invest in protectionist measures and to try and stop or slow or throttle innovation than it is to actually drive it, because it's not an open market. And so the lack of a capitalist construct is really destroying value for consumers in television. We know that because we have approval rates, right? Different operators are trying different tactics to sort of address this. Some are innovating, i.e. Verizon invested in Intel Media. And then we see that, you know, some folks like Comcast are actually buying into this idea of actually being able to leverage and charge premiums for their pipes, right? Adam Smith talked about this theory of the fact that when capitalism is fundamentally the fact that when you allow someone to pursue their self-interest, fundamentally it will benefit society as a whole. The problem is that in a controlled marketplace, the pursuance of self-interest results in the destruction of value and a value proposition for consumers or the end sort of recipients, right? And if we talk about bringing net neutrality or an open and free internet, but so distribute it through a controlled ecosystem, we're not getting any further ahead in getting audiences or consumers more of what they need and they require for the continual evolution and continuation of accelerating returns as a result of this industrial revolution. So here's my big takeaway and my advice to the cable industry. Gentlemen, don't the internet like television. It will destroy value for all of us for an eternity. Thank you.